Welcome to Women Connecting with Women, our monthly networking event sponsored by KASB and USA Kansas. This is our second session of the series, hoping that it leads up to the 2021 Women's Leadership Summit. We'd like to gather again in Manhattan this spring in person, but until then, we want to keep you engaged and we want to have time to share stories and get ideas from other women leaders throughout the state. As you may remember, our first guest was Governor Laura Kelly, and I am tickled to say I know our current speaker for today is a little concerned that she's following Governor Kelly, but we have almost as many participants today as we had last month, so that's a great sign. Each month we will be featuring a successful woman leader, and she will briefly share her leadership journey, answer a few questions from our in-house staff here, and then she'll respond to questions from participants. We would ask that as you think of questions that you'd like to ask the speaker, you go ahead and enter those in the chat box, and then we will go through those as time allows. We want to be respectful of your time and make sure that we end right on time, which should be about 12:45. I am Sue Givens. I'm a state field specialist with the Kansas Association of School Boards. My partner in crime and the person I have the honor of sharing these sessions with is?
I'm Leah Fleiter, and I'm Director of Governmental Relations, and the honor is all mine. I'd like to introduce to you today our second speaker. Lori Blake is a member of the USD 306 Southeast of Saline Board of Education, and she is the Executive Director of the Child Advocacy and Parenting Services Organization in Salina. Lori, welcome. Thank you for being here today on such a wet and icy day.
Thank you.
And we are so pleased to have you with us today.
I am thrilled to be out of Saline County. I cannot lie about that. I joked that who knew the first time we travel out of the county in a while, the weather would be the way it was. I literally have not left the county in several months, so except for football games. So just such a pleasure to be with you all today. I just want to start off by saying thank you to you all who are joining on the call today. I know that being in person is such a better way to learn from each other and connect with each other and learn from each other. But this has really broadened our opportunity to reach people all across the state of Kansas. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to follow Governor Kelly. It may feel a little anticlimactic to you all. I hope I live up to the expectations that have been placed before me. So just wanted to start off a little bit by telling you a little bit where I've come from. I grew up in Saline County. I went to school in my neighboring county, McPherson County, at Bethany College, and got a degree in communications with a business. When I was an 8th grader, I decided I wanted to be a photojournalist, and that was my very clear path. In college, I took communications for very, very specific reasoning, and by the end of my sophomore year, I decided I was tired of being on a deadline, but I was not about to start over in my collegiate preparations, and so I just kept on going, and I thought, you know, a broad degree of communications will serve me well, and it'll be just fine to continue that way. My final semester on campus, I took a class very intentionally. It was a career preparation class, and most people take it as a freshman to help guide them, but I knew what I was doing in life, and so I waited to use that time to prepare myself to write a resume and to practice my interviewing skills, because when do you need that more than ever? When you're entering the workforce. What I didn't know was there would be a interest inventory that is much like the career cruising opportunities we're now providing our junior high and high school students. But I did not take one of those until I was 21 years old, almost ready to graduate from college. And in that frame, it said that I should be an educator, a social worker, or a nonprofit administrator. So
You're all three.
Look at that. Here I am today. Have not actually served in any of those roles outside of nonprofit leadership in my entire career. And I really graduated still feeling like, I thought when you graduated college, you're supposed to know who you're going to be when you grow up, and you're going to have this clear path out in front of you. And I'm sure that most of our students that we educate in our schools every day feel that same way. And I'm here to say that I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But I have been provided with many, many opportunities, and at the heart of who I am, a leader certainly is something that has always been an identity that has resonated with me. When I reflected back on who inspired me or why I've landed where I've landed, the church is very much a part of my entire being, and that's credit to my family. When I think back on the fact that both of my grandparents on my mother and father's side grew up in the United Methodist faith, and they provided us with that foundation and those roots. And I have been surrounded my entire life by people who loved me. And quite frankly, I have maybe only been told no one time in my leadership journey. That's kind of a strange thing when you think about what that means. I've never questioned what it means to be a woman in leadership. My parents never doubted that ability. They were always encouraging and always inspiring, and provided us with opportunities to develop ourselves through 4-H and through church, and encourage leadership opportunities in school. We did all the things in high school with STUCO, and I was a state officer with what was then Future Homemakers of America, now the Future Community Career Leaders of America, and just had some incredible student development opportunities. But really, it comes down to serving others. That is what motivates me. I feel like every opportunity I've been given has come from a place of very much calling, and that the unique skills that I have were meant for a certain purpose in time. And my first job right out of college, I hated every single minute of it. I was a personnel supervisor. I was interviewing people coming off the streets for a temporary agency. And the whole thing there was, I am here to be a matchmaker, essentially. And we were using these people's unfortunate experiences to make money off of, which I was very uncomfortable with. And at the end of that 10 months, I had my first migraine that I've ever had. And I went home that night and I was like, really, God, this is what I'm doing now. If there's a reason, please just let me know what that is. And I would be happy to continue in this, but there's got to be a bigger purpose and plan for my life. And I'm not kidding when I say the very next day, I got a phone call from a woman that knew me in the church that I grew up in and said, I don't know what you're doing professionally. I know you just recently got married, and I know you recently graduated from college. And for some reason today, when our business manager at the nonprofit I work at told us that she was resigning, your name came to my mind. Would you like to come interview for our business manager job at what was then called Child Abuse Prevention Services, now known as Child Advocacy and Parenting Services? And so for the last 25 years, I've had the opportunity to develop my skills, not just in that one organization, but I worked for USD 305 as the Volunteers and Partners Coordinator, had the opportunity to learn about business in our community, again, as a matchmaker, to match volunteers with our school's needs and really learn about the school system, and to really see the piece of me that is connected to education, which began with my grandmother, who was a teacher for 34 years in Minneapolis, Kansas. She was always available to me. She's kind of my kindred spirit in the fact that literature was her thing. She was a drama coach and directed plays, but really empowering people is what she was all about, and lifting up leaders in her classroom and teaching. She is a spirit that is with me every single day of my life. And then on the flip side, my mother's mother actually just died last month at the age of 107, and her entire life was about serving others. She never worked a day outside of the home. She ran a dairy with my grandfather, who died when she was 61. So she lived as a widow almost as long as she lived as his wife. And she was always in service to her community and finding ways to reach out to humanity and help the world. We had to schedule appointments with her to visit her, because if we just showed up, she wouldn't be home. So as my children were very small and I was only working part-time, I had that fortune to develop that relationship. And so I just think back of all of these collective experiences, and that I was given the opportunity and I was given the encouragement that I needed when I needed to hear it most. And I feel very much that that was our creator and our sustainer doing that for us. For me personally, and putting me where I'm supposed to be, faith is very much a big part of my life, and I can't function without that. But I do think that it speaks to every one of us that the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child, is such a truism. Not one person can give a human being everything they need in life. And so to have the opportunity to be surrounded by people who cared and who saw things in me that I didn't maybe see in myself in moments of time, really has led me to where I am today. And I can honestly say that my work on the school board at Southeast of Saline has led me to connecting with women in a way that I didn't really have exposure to prior to that, outside of the women leaders in our community. In fact, I was kind of angry about the apathy that I saw in my male counterparts as I was going through the schooling. And like, why do people just not get involved, and why don't they feel the same way about commitment and serving others that I did? But it really shows me, we each have different experiences. And when I was working at CAPS the first time, I got to go through a training with a pastor friend of mine who'd done research on the group mind. And it is where I have landed, and why I love the work that we get to do as school board members today, is because the group mind is always better than an individual mind. Looking at those collective experiences and bringing all of those ideas together and those different perspectives together is really what drives me to continue in leadership and continue as a problem solver. I find that group mind is what energizes me the most.
You know, before we begin with the questions, Leah, I want to thank you, Lord, because what I appreciate most about your story is that it's different from other people's stories. And as women leaders, too often, we tend to think that we have to share a story of adversity, or we have to compare with something that we've heard someone else share. Women leaders come from all different aspects and all different pasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing you share that gives license to those who may have been thinking, well, I don't know that I've got some grand adversity that I've overcome. And you basically said you've been told once, no, once. And there will be others who will have just the opposite story. The importance is that we have all of those stories in Women Leaders in Kansas. So thank you for sharing a completely different perspective.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
It really came to light. I was listening to a book by Sue Monk Kidd in the last 7 months. It's called The Dance of the Dissident Daughter, and her experience of being raised in the Southern Baptist Church, and how she did not acknowledge until she was 44 years old that she'd been raised in this patriarchy. And I just thought, how blessed am I that I do not have that common experience, that in our house, the people that we elevated were people that were serving. My dad was raised in the civil rights era, so Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody that we talked about a lot. Oprah was elevated in college. The things that we were reading, Toni Morrison as an author, really spoke to me. And so I think that common experience that my parents went through in the 60s translated into the work that I do, and the importance of equity and lifting others and really finding equity. That it's not about, for me, it's not about elevating women over anyone, but just giving us equal playing field and giving us the voice to have equal voice and equal opportunity and equal pay for the same work that men are doing.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah.
What a great way to kick off our session today. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about your leadership journey and the past that's brought you to this point. Can you tell us a little bit about a lesson that you've learned over the past 6 or 7 months?
Absolutely. Practice what you preach. I work for an organization that deals with traumatic experiences for children and families in our community. And we are always talking about practicing mental health and the importance of recognizing when you're not taking care of yourself and practicing that self-care. It's one of the things that I highlighted when I was running for this seat, and the importance of recognizing we do not know what our students are walking with. We have no idea the experiences within their homes and what they carry with them every single day. And so to be able to walk with our staff at CAPS and at Southeast of Saline and across the state as educators, as we're making decisions for children and teachers all across the state of Kansas, to be able to look through that lens and say, how are you taking care of yourself? And for the first time in my life, because I think I tend to overschedule myself in order to maybe not reflect on what I really need and really and dealing with in my life. And for the first time in my life, I experienced depression over the last 7 months. And I am in therapy for the first time in my life. And I am on an antidepressant for the first time in my life. And I'm not saying that because I'm seeking any kind of pity or anything like that. I am just trying to be transparent and being real with people about what the stress of 7 months of isolation, and when you take the things that bring you most joy. So for me, having my butt in a bleacher, watching my kids compete on the field, listening to them sing, watching them perform, you take those things away. You take away the interactions that come from those relationships with your parents and your community members, the ability to go to church and sing in the choir. All of those things that bring me joy and really are the things that filled me were gone. And while I needed the time to rest and heal and reflect and be able to serve and make decisions for our state and for our local community, I also had to look at myself and say, this is not normal, and it's okay to not be normal. And so I've been walking that with my staff and with my family and being very clear about what I'm feeling and experiencing, and feel a ton better than I did 2 months ago. But that's okay, that everybody has a time in their life that therapy is appropriate and that medication is not a thing to be afraid of.
Yeah, and being courageous enough to admit and to seek help,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
critical.
So again, it's that practicing what I've preached my entire life, and especially in the last 5 years at CAPS. It's been a real growth experience to be on the other side of what that feels like, and to have empathy for folks that may not have the motivation to get out of bed in the morning or the ability to manage their emotions the way they normally would be able to.
In your profession,
Mhm.
have you not also been close to depression just in dealing with the cases and knowing what you know about what children are experiencing?
Right.
Has that always kind of been a difficult thing to deal with anyway?
So generally, no, it hasn't been. And I think it's because I've had the outlet of the balance in life to be able to see the joyful moments and see the flip side of kids overcoming things. But when you remove all of those positive experiences and all you're looking at is the reality that our kids lost their safety net. They lost the people who were looking out for them. And we have no idea the implications of that 7 months and what that means for kiddos that didn't have exposure to loving, caring adults. And those people live in our buildings. Our teachers, our administrators care so deeply about our kids, and they're looking out for them every single day. And so not only are they having to come back and teach in a model that is different than anything they've ever prepared for, but they're also dealing with students who have gone through things that none of us can understand necessarily, and don't have a frame of reference of the full implications of what that meant. So I think the key there again is it's what is your balance? You know, how do we, it's not about necessarily equality, you know, or having enough good and bad, but for you, where is your center? And what does that center need to be for you to maintain your health and your effectiveness in a leadership role?
My goodness, that was wonderful. In spite of the challenges of this isolation, do you have a support system as a woman leader? And could you share a little bit about that with us?
Absolutely. And my support system has come from my experience on the school board and my role in education. I had the opportunity to step into a school situation 12 years ago where we, for the first time in our district, had more women than men on our board. Before that, we'd only had 2 women at a time on a board of 7. And it was an incredible experience to come together and have people on both sides of the aisle. You know, thankfully, politics were never a thing at that board table. It was always about what was best for kids. And we all felt free enough to really dialogue and talk about each other's perspective. And like, just to give you kind of a framework of who we're talking about, we had a banking professional that had 30 years of banking history, female woman. We had an owner of property. She was a rental management person. We have a doctorate in animal sciences and nutrition. She's a rancher now. A teacher who runs a pumpkin patch. And then myself as a nonprofit administrator. We're the 5 women that came together collectively, and most of us would not have had opportunity or reason to be together otherwise, and to learn and grow and really those are my people still today. If I need something, I know I can call any of them. Lynn Exline, if you're on the call, she's one of my best friends from church, and she's superintendent of Salina Public Schools. We worked together in Salina and developed a great friendship, and we're just a great support to each other. So I think that those kinds of relationships where people understand the decisions that you're making as a school board member have been most helpful to me, especially in the last 7 months, because they have empathy and they understand the weight of the decisions that are being made.
Can you talk a little bit, you talked about your role models already. Can you help us understand maybe what could Kansas do to recruit more women leaders?
Yeah, so when you look across the state of Kansas and you look at who's sitting in superintendent roles, it does not match who's teaching in our classrooms. And I think that all stems from how are we lifting each other up? You know, how are our women leaders who are already there, how are they recognizing those skills and those gifts within our systems already and providing them with opportunities to grow and to see themselves again in a way that maybe they don't see themselves. I've witnessed that in our own school district over the last 7 months. Our district leadership team include teachers from the classroom, from the elementary and the secondary, and it has been incredible to watch that work get delegated out because there's not enough time for a building principal or a superintendent to do everything. So to be able to disseminate that responsibility and give them the opportunity to grow or fail and learn from those failures and to be supported again in a place where people care about you and say, you know what, we need to foster a climate of failure.
Yeah.
Because it's okay to fail. We learn most when we have those negative experiences. It's how we respond to that failure that is important. And so I think just to push the envelope and to say it's okay. You know, we're not a perfect system. There's going to be issues.
Lori, in your leadership journey, what are you most proud of?
I guess the role that I'm in right now, and being able to discern what I'm uniquely qualified for. I used to be an easy yes. If there was a vacancy in a committee or something, you know, people would say, "Oh, ask Lori, she'll do it." And I took a study probably 15 years ago that really helped me recognize that if I don't have a unique perspective and I don't have a unique experience that can inform whatever I've been asked to do, that probably it's just another thing. And it's not something that I need to invest my time and energy into. And having enough margin on my page to be able to respond in those moments. So to have that white space around the outside of our lives, to be able to hear and listen and reflect. And that's been one of the things I've most missed about my trips to Topeka over the last 7 months is I use that time to listen to podcasts and to just be in silence and think. And there's not a lot of opportunity in my normal life for that. I've had too much maybe of that in the last 7 months. But anyway, I just think that the opportunity to come together and learn from each other as a state of Kansas, to get to know each one of you on this call, I am just so blessed and feel so fortunate to have that opportunity.
What are some of your favorite podcasts?
Brene Brown is at the top of my list. She has 2 podcasts. One is brand new that actually just started yesterday, and it's Dare to Lead. Certainly relevant for all of the work that we're doing here. The other one, I can't think of the name of it because I just have it on my auto Spotify follow, but she is lifting the voices of other women, and she is really addressing issues of equity across our nation and saying there is no place for shame in the work that we have to do, that we can all be courageous and that we can dare to lead and dare to take risks. And the person I was listening to today was Abby Wambach, and her book, The Wolf Pack, is what they were talking about. And the last chapter just really spoke to me. How many of us on this call today have had the opportunity in life to reflect and be grateful for the experiences that we have, but also to recognize we earned those? That stuck with me this morning. I mean, I come from such a place of always gratitude. I think that that helps with happiness and health and wholeness. But dang it, we work hard and we've invested the time and the energy and we put ourselves in situations to learn and grow, and we should own that. So I need to buy the book now to go read it, but that was a message that really stood out to me this morning. Also, Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. She has incredible guests, and I've been listening to her for the last 5 years. Just if you watched her show, her podcast is even more, because the depth of the conversations, I think, are an hour long with one guest. And I've gotten a lot of book follows and book reads out of listening to those two in particular.
Lori, do you feel like you have a unique set of challenges as a working mother? I know you've got kids in high school, and so talk a little bit about how you've managed that along with all the things that you have taken on.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make choices in our life. I grew up, like I said before, never really being told no, that I couldn't do something. In my marriage, I've had the same experience. I'm blessed to have a very supportive husband that doesn't question the things that I am driven to and the experiences that I feel called to. But there becomes moments in time, and I've experienced those moments in time where things are out of balance. And I've had to reflect, and one of those times happened right before my daughter was starting kindergarten. And I was just feeling like I wasn't doing anything that was meaningful, even though I was doing a lot of things. And that's when I took that study, and I really learned about that having margin on my page and being able to recognize that there's a time and a place, and that we as women can have everything, but maybe not all at the same time. And so for me, being available to my kids was something that was very important to me. I actually had decided I wasn't going to run for this seat as KSB president. And I had communicated that with my fellow board members who were encouraging me that. And I actually called Dr. Heim and said, I'm not doing it, even though he stays out of all of the presidential politics. I just felt like, my daughter's going to have her senior year, and I do not want to miss a single thing. And so I went home that night after I'd had those conversations, and I told my family, because we make family decisions, that was it. And I will never forget Madeline, who now is a freshman at the University of Kansas, looking at me. She says, you would give up that opportunity because you might miss a basketball game or a concert? And I said, yes. And she said, well, that's stupid. She said, Mom, just think about all the things that you would get to go and do and experience and learn by putting yourself out there. And she was right. I'm glad that I changed my mind. My colleagues on the board said, your kids have the opportunity to see you in a different light when you're in a role that way. My number one priority is always my family. I don't think that they feel neglected. I've been fortunate to work for places that my family is always first and my job second, and to be able to support the volunteer work that I get to do here. It's just, I feel at peace, and I know things are right when those cross sections intersect and it all goes the way it should. I think if you can feel that, I'm an empath, so I feel things more than maybe I think things through sometimes, but I definitely feel that kind of support.
I recently advised a former student on Facebook who was struggling with having to return to work and leaving a young child at home, that you can do both and you can be very good at both.
Yep.
But reminding other women of that is just critical as we support one another.
Absolutely.
It is possible. And it's even more possible when you become a grandma. I'm just here to tell everybody that that's even more possible. So,
yeah, it is something that you struggle with, and thinking about the future. The therapist that I'm working with right now, I've been thinking about what I'm going to do next when I'm done with my role on the school board, because I've decided I'm not going to run again in next year. And so I'm a forward thinker, and she says, can you not just be in the moment? And that is something that my husband has said to me over time also. Can you not just be? And it's a hard thing for me to do, but I'm practicing that.
as a school board member, talk a little bit about some of the challenges and what as you kind of forecast next semester, looking at the end of this school year, what are some of the major things that you feel you'll be dealing with and things that you feel school board members need to prepare for?
I think the biggest concern I have is for our teachers. I'm seeing signs of burnout already, and we're just ending the first 9 weeks. So how are we going to sustain our educators for the next 3 quarters when, my district's been very fortunate. We've been able to stay live through the whole first 9 weeks. We had 1 practice remote day, but we're teaching 5 days a week right now. And I know that's not the case for many of you on this call. You're dealing with different platforms and models of education. So I think finding ways that we can lift up our teachers and recognize we're all in this together, sharing that message with our parents, because parents who have made the decision to do remote learning are experiencing the same things as our teachers. And then as school board members, keeping all that in perspective as we're making decisions about what model of education we're living in and we're choosing, we have to do safety and health first, and we have to be in partnership and in step with our county health officials. So I think advocating at that level and helping our communities recognize the stress that's on this system, and that it's not up to the education system to be the only response, that it's not just up to us to fix the problem. Business can be a part of the dialogue. It's not just us that has to find the solution. My place of employment, we worked remotely until the middle of June, and we provide flexible schedules for our employees to be able to be teachers at home with their kids if they need to do that. So other businesses, I think, can make those same decisions, and we as school board members and leaders in our community can be that voice to say, what are you doing to help us with the same problem? We are in this together. This is a global crisis. This is not something that the education system brought on ourselves. It's our response to take care of the kids in our care with our parents and with our community, and to be part of the solution, but not the only solution.
I think we make a lot of assumptions about what has happened to children during this time period. And so I would make some assumptions about what you are seeing, but I'd like to hear from a professional. What have you seen in your professional role with children?
Yeah. So in the months of March and April, we saw the number of child abuse reports cut in half, 50%. That is a direct, and generally in the months of March and April, we're seeing an uptick because we have made stronger relationships as teachers in the classroom, and teachers have gotten a handle on really what's taking place with their students, and they've felt like, okay, my mandated response to report child abuse is more than a suspicion. I'm making the response. I'm making that report. So to know in the months of March, April, May, that we had 50% across the country. It was not just in our local community, across the country, because kids were not in places where we have mandated reporters. That has gone away. We're seeing, so we also do in-home family visitation. We work with families to learn parenting skills and better ways of doing things. And when our economy shut down and we put all these stop gaps in place, like you can't be evicted because you're not paying your rent, which is not a terrible thing, but what that has done is just push the problem down the road. And so now that we're out of that window, we have families dying on the vine because they can't pay their rent. They have gotten in over their head with electric bills, and they can't maintain that. And our reports of child abuse are now doubling what they normally would be at this time of year. Again, they're back with people that see them and care for them, and not that parents don't. I don't want you to get that message. What I want you to know is that stress is the #1 reason child abuse occurs. And when you're in any kind of a stressful environment and you don't have support, bad things happen. So I feel blessed that we have CARES Act money that we can respond to some of those family needs. There's a new program that was just released last week by Governor Kelly, up to $5,000 per family for past due rent. So that it's the eviction program. So we have resources in the state of Kansas. to address some of those needs. We're entering the cold weather season again with utilities, so there will be LEAP assistance coming again for utility payments. But just to be aware as a school board member that, and as community leaders, that there are resources in our state through COVID funding that can be responsive to some of those problems that have happened, in addition to unemployment and things like that.
I would remind our audience that if you have questions, please go ahead and submit them. I could fill up Lori's time myself, and so don't hesitate to jump in. We've had a lot of conversation about finding the podcasts that you
Yes.
referenced.
Yes, unlocking us. Thank you, Marcia, for getting that out of my head.
That's right.
And actually, Brene Brown, well, she's on lots of platforms. If you just Google her name, she has a website, and I believe all of her podcasts are made free through that. So you don't have to have a subscription to one of those platforms in order to access the information.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. I have to tell you that we are in front of a green screen, and so as I've been watching Lori, and I'm sure she's seeing the same thing I am, one half of your face is a beautiful green, about the color of Elphaba in Wicked, and it really gives me a whole different perspective on your personality. And I'm sure you're seeing
I
the
am
same.
seeing
Yes,
that
that's
too.
that's what I
Yes,
thought.
yes.
That's what I thought.
And actually, the thought didn't even enter my mind.
But it brings up my next question, which
Okay.
is, as a woman leader, oftentimes we are accused of being harsh or having responses that aren't as kind as sometimes others are expecting. Have you ever dealt with that? Have you had that kind of an accusation before, that perhaps you were too aggressive as a woman leader?
I've not had the accusation of being too aggressive. I have been told by those who love me the most that I may be a little intense.
Imagine.
I do think that there are times that we find our voice and we find our place at a table where we are the experts. And when we use that voice in a way that maybe they're not used to hearing, because I generally am not that way. I generally am pretty even and pretty calm and try to be loving and nurturing in everything that I do. But I do have a breaking point. And in those moments, that intensity comes out, and I do think it's intimidating, and it causes me pause to remember that we are in control of the emotions that we have and how we respond to those emotions. Just like the leadership training I was able to go through with Kansas Leadership Center, there's a time to turn the heat up. There's a time for Kansas nice. But we as leaders have to recognize when to use those tools. And as women, we think about things in a different way that I'm certain men do. And that's a sad reality that we have a different lens, or maybe it's a blessing, but we do have a different lens. And I think that we're more thoughtful about those kinds of things, and that we are at a disadvantage because it is unexpected when we use that voice and we use those tones. But there are times when they're necessary, and that's what gets people to pay attention. And it's sad that that's what it has to come to, but there are times that it's absolutely necessary.
You're right. There is research that supports that women have a different physiological response to any stimulus. And so those are things that you need to understand so that you can be more measured and I guess more temperate than you might naturally tend to be.
Yeah.
You talked when you first came in about women tending to apologize too much. Let's hit that before we close.
Okay, yeah. So that was one of the things that I was hearing this morning on that podcast I was listening to with Abby Wambach. That we have earned the seat at the table. We deserve to be in the room. To go back to the Hamilton reference that I put in one of my blogs earlier this year, we're a part of the story. We're a part of our nation's history. One of the things that this last 7 months has really brought to light is some of the stories that are being lifted that we've never heard of. There was a movie called, this is not my strong suit. I should always write these things down. It's Octavia. It's about the first woman millionaire in our
Yes.
country. It's
Yes.
something made.
The hair products,
yes,
that was her
yes,
empire.
Yes. And I was appalled that I had never heard the story of the first woman millionaire, and she was a single African-American woman. We need to own ourselves and our stories, and we need to tell those stories to people and share them with our children and the people in our lives to lift each other, stop apologizing. One of my favorite books is Girl, Wash Your Face. It's by Rachel Hollis. It's that look in the mirror and recognize the gifts God gave you and use them. Stop apologizing. Men don't do that. There's not a man I know that apologizes for using the gifts that God gave him. Why do we do that? I think that my journey as a mother has brought those things more to a head than anything. Madeline, as a mother of a young woman, I think that Madeline has helped me become a better leader and a better woman than I would have been had I not had a daughter to raise, because I see in her the things that I wanted and I didn't necessarily have for myself when I was at her age. And it's just an incredible journey of life that we get to be on. And we got to be there for each other and be real with each other, be transparent and share all the things, not just the things that look good in social media, but all the things, good, bad, and ugly. And that will take us further than anything.
And you have done that today, and we appreciate it so much. I've had a couple of private messages about people who appreciated your honesty and your frank approach, and that you shared those tough things that are courageous. And so thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
with us. You're making a difference. There's no question. And because you're a woman, you're making a bigger difference.
Thank you.
Leah, as always, was the better half of this hosting gig.
Oh, no.
And so I want to thank all of you who have been with us for this session, and have joined in some really important learnings from Lori Blake, our presenter today. We want this time to be valuable for you, and so that we ask you to fill out an evaluation. You'll receive an email shortly after this session ends. Please fill that out. We want to keep growing this program. We want to make sure that it has meaning
right.
for you and is worth your lunch period. And then the last thing that I want to remind you about, I will share my screen. I hope I can still do that. Is our next session is on Tuesday, November 17th at noon. In a couple of weeks, you'll receive information about who our guest speaker will be. And we'll want you to go ahead and get registered for that now. You can register actually for all of the remaining sessions at kasb.org by going to our website. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Leah, Lori, thank you.
Thank you.
We hope to see everyone again next month.